Is Governor Bobby Jindal practicing what he preaches when it comes to ethics and transparency? Good evening, everyone. I'm Camille Whitworth.
And I'm Chris Fairbairn. The I-Team has discovered the governor's office ranks dead last in the country when it comes to transparency. Some lawmakers say after this past legislative session, they now know why. WDSU News Channel 6 I-Team investigative reporter Travers Mackel is on your side to explain. Travers?
Chris, since taking office in January, Governor Bobby Jindal has talked transparency. But when it comes to his own office, some lawmakers say he has a long way to go. At the state capitol on the last day of the legislative session,
it's really a chaotic time for the legislature.
The last day is pretty hectic. We're dealing with a lot of things,
including hundreds of bills like this one, Senate Bill 363, proposed by Senator Tom Nevers from Bogalusa, an education bill dealing with the Louisiana Youth Advisory Council.
We got this on the last day of the session.
And State Representative Neil Abramson said something was wrong with the bill. In particular, a last-minute amendment tacked on dealing with records in the custody of the governor's office.
This one actually came to us on the last day, the last afternoon, if I believe, and it was an amendment that was put on that had nothing to do with the original bill that was originally debated. So when you get those, it raises your eyebrows, and you have to say, wait, what's going on here?
State Representative Walker Hines agrees.
Clearly the amendment is a very deceptive amendment. The original bill dealt with the Legislative Youth Advisory Board.
And it didn't appear to me to be related to the same subject matter as the original bill, which was kids issues, children's matters.
Nonetheless, the bill passed in both the House and Senate during the session's closing minutes. Tuesday, the governor signed the Senate bill into law. As for what this amendment does,
the amendment, in fact, takes away the governor's records from public access. It removes entire transparency, which we passed during the ethics session for all the governor's records, and I think that's something that's very disappointing.
Tulane University political analyst Dr. Brian Brox.
This really is expanding kind of a veil of secrecy over certain governors' actions without a whole lot of public debate. This was not done with a full debate in the legislature.
Basically, any document in his office is now off limits. You can't request it. You can't do any type of public records request, and he doesn't have to produce it if he doesn't want to.
Meaning, the governor's schedule, documents that show who influences his decisions and who he meets with now and in the future would be shielded.
I worry that the governor, talks all about transparency for everybody but himself, and that's something I really fear that this legislation does.
Jim Brandt heads up the Public Affairs Research Council, or PAR, the state's largest government watchdog group.
It's so broad and it gives so much discretion to the governor's office. Virtually anything in the governor's office now is still out of reach, out of sunshine, out of public scrutiny.
It's like the governor's taking a play out of the Bush playbook in that secrecy appears to be the word of the day.
In fact, a study done by the Citizens Access Project at the University of Florida ranked Louisiana last in the country when it comes to transparency in the governor's office. And that was before Jindal took office. And this bill making documents in his office inaccessible was approved by lawmakers.
I think we have to have more sunshine on the governor's office.
As for how the process all went down, to slip an amendment dealing with the governor's office into an education bill.
It was done very poorly, in our view. The fact that it was added the last minute without really any chance to review, it was unfortunate.
Had myself and many other legislators known that was snuck on to another bill, what we call hijacked another bill, I think we clearly would not have supported that bill.
And that's why some lawmakers say the governor has to start practicing what he preaches.
It has to be done if we intend on changing the perception of corruption throughout government in the state of Louisiana.
Tonight, the governor is responding, sending us this statement on Senate Bill 363. We were happy to work with the Press Association and to publicly testify with them about the importance of this legislation. To expand public records access, this legislation was publicly debated in the conference committee and has been publicly touted for being a true step forward in increasing transparency into the executive branch. We should mention when we contacted the Press Association, we were told they do not think this legislation goes far enough. While it does make public certain documents held by about 60 agencies under the control of the governor's office itself, as you heard in the story, is off limits. Carl Redmond with the Press Association told me tonight it's a public policy issue. If you want to see Bobby Jindal's schedule, you can sue, and he doesn't have to give it to you. The Press Association hopes to address this matter during next year's legislative session. We should point out that Louisiana has consistently ranked at the bottom of the list when it comes to transparency in the governor's office before Bobby Jindal was elected last fall. Chris?
Travers, on the other end of the spectrum, Alabama ranks first in transparency.